So I also have I have another scoop mark on the calf of my leg, which I have had since I was a boy. I have other marks, like I have a double mark on my knee here, which I've found the identical mark on Ben Devereaux. It was Ben and Alex, his mum Rachel, and Rachel's mum Anne, and they were all taken. They were all taken from their car, and they were part of the Real 4400 TV program. I was up staying with them at their house near Kirby Lonsdale, and I was telling them that not all marks that we get are obvious. They're not like, Kilroy was here sort of thing. The ETs don't want everybody to know. So sometimes they're just like almost like a freckle, if you like. But like I have one here on my leg, which perhaps you can see, which is a dark one, and I also have another one there which is not so pronounced. But if you notice, they're actually perfectly round, which freckles tend not to be. And those two came one night, so they most definitely are connected with the ETs. Also, I think it's connected with the body's meridians, energy and stuff like that, so that's those. But going back to the double one by my knee, I was telling them about this, and told them about the knee one, and then we were all rolling trouser legs up to check, and we were all surprised when Ben said, "Look at this." He had the identical ones to me, same distance apart, same location, on the same leg. Wow. So, and I've got photographs and close-up photographs of that, and so I have the proof of that. So it made me think that perhaps the same ETs who took the Devereaux family are the ones who are involved with me.
Does seem that.
Yeah, it would seem that way. And also another thing is that some marks that we get fade within a week, say, or even sooner than that, whereas others last a lifetime almost. So it's almost as if they need to know that you've had that procedure done on you, maybe. When they pick you up, oh, check that. Oh yeah, he's got a double there, so he's had that one done. Right. That's just a maybe. Maybe. Possibly. I don't know. I had another experience down in Wiltshire when I was looking at crop circles with David Caton. Our friend Gary came over from Australia, who's had incredible experiences with the ETs and has total recall. Really? Yeah, wow. Which is most unusual.
So why do you think some people do and some people don't have recall?
I honestly don't know, but in his circumstances he was very badly affected by the ETs. He was very, very ill after being taken hospital for a long time.
What, for physical things or mental? Physical things, yes, definitely. I mean, the doctors thought he'd been,
they asked him if he'd been near to dangerous chemicals or radioactive materials. Some are and some are not. The ones that were involved with him most definitely not.
I have heard before that they're not friendly or they've just sort of got no sort of emotion towards it, and they're just sort of kind of experimenting.
Well,
I've kind of heard before.
some are that way,
Yeah.
but the Greys that I am involved with have families, they have children, the children laugh and play.
How do you know that then?
Well, because I have a very dear friend who lives in Swindon, and she goes on board ship regularly, perhaps once a fortnight. She has an implant in her skull which gives her that facility. It also causes pain and other problems for her, but she thinks it's worth it to be able to do that. And she watches people being having procedures done on them, on the tables, on the ships. And she's seen many procedures done, and she says, "Oh, thank you." Oh, great. Well, thank you. Wow. Okay, I'll try. And what the Greys tell her is that they're amazed at how badly we look after our bodies. So what they're actually doing is putting things right that were wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. So so they're the good ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read that a lot of people have probably been abducted and don't even know it.
Oh yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, they live their whole lives
Oh, yeah.
and don't even realise they've been taken.
You absolutely, you wouldn't have a clue. It's really only by being aware of the particular marks, the scoop marks, the triangles, the puncture marks, that and you get to know where to look for certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, like the puncture mark inside my left bicep, and the double that I had here just a couple of weeks ago, are definitely to keep me in this form, to stop me from changing my appearance, because that would be a bit awkward walking down the street looking like an ET, wouldn't it? You know?
So maybe you're like say you're one of them,
Yeah.
and you've agreed to come here
Yeah.
for whatever reason,
Yeah.
and they're keeping tabs on you and helping you out because
I think part of the reason is to do what I'm doing today,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that is to try to make people more comfortable with this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many people who live lives where they know this is happening to them, but their families tell them that they're going mad. I had one.
so they suppress it. They
Yeah,
just like,
yeah, absolutely.
You never
And-
leave a brother behind.
And so this is the real reason why I do this. It's not for me. It's for other people who are suffering in silence, really. And the more people like me come out and talk about this sort of thing,
It's like saying, okay, it's okay to come forward
Yeah,
and speak your
yeah,
truth.
but
Yeah.
it's not the easiest thing in the world to do,
It isn't
because
with anything on the kind
No,
of
I mean,
subject.
that's it. This is why it's important, because where people go, it's not like they can rape victims. They can't go to a rape centre or whatever. It's just not recognised, is it? And
that's
in
right.
this physical way.
We're doubly abused, because the people who get abused by ETs, which happens, when they come down here, they can't tell anybody, so they're treated like idiots or crackpots, so they get a double abuse. And it's time it finished.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a hell of a long time, and the authorities have kept it quiet by telling people that they're going crackers and all this kind of business. Oh, come on,
Swamp gas.
Yeah, swamp gas, all that kind of stuff. It's time we got real about this.
I think
Exactly.
more and more people are becoming comfortable with all these hidden subjects.
It is.
It
It is
is
changing.
It's rising to the surface a bit more, isn't it?
UFOs, it's all connected.
I've been doing the research, if you like, for almost 40 years. I've been a contactee all my life, and it will continue all the rest of my
And can you
life.
see a difference from say 40 years?
Huge difference, yes. It's a lot more acceptable these days to say that you have contact with ETs. I just go back to what really triggered me to get going on this was an encounter that I had on the 28th of December 1980. It was a major UFO encounter on the Macclesfield to Leek Road, where I live, and it was 9 o'clock in the evening, 28th of December 1980. That's an important date because it's the date of the Rendlesham Forest incident, the main event, if you like. This was a disc of about 90 feet in diameter, which was I pulled into the lay-by. I couldn't see it, but I'd seen a red light up the road, which I knew was not a farmer's lantern or a light on an aeroplane, because it was far too low and there were surrounding hills and what have you. So I watched the red light as long as I could, and then when I got to this place about half a mile up the road, I thought, well, I just got a feeling it's round here somewhere. So I pulled into the lay-by, got out of the car, and bang, there it was above me. 90-foot disc, blotting the sky out. It was less than 100, 150 feet at most above my head. So it blotted the sky. And then my wife pulled, she was following on in her car, and eventually she came into the lay-by and stood with me.
Did she see it?
She saw it, yeah. As we watched it fly slowly away, 30 miles an hour, that's all. And at that point, when it flew away, I mean, at first all I could see was the underside of the disc, which was a very deep black, sooty blackness. I mean, I could see the stars all around the rim, in between the bottom of the rim and the tops of the hills, kind of thing. A line of stars twinkling in the frosty night sky, and but as it flew away, then I could see there were what I thought were windows all the way around the bottom of it, and I counted them 3 times to be certain, and there were 11 and a half windows visible from a side-on view. Obviously they carried on around the other side. When I first stood under it, it was silent, no noise. But as it started to move away, it made this very deep rumbling, roaring sound.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Bill.
And then the following morning, I saw another one as I was driving to work, about half a mile up maybe 3/4 of a mile up the road from there. As I was driving up the road towards Lime Green, Macclesfield, this object shaped like a tin can, size of a small car, flew out of the field at the side of the road, across the road in front of me. It had no protrusions, no windows, nothing on it. I couldn't hear anything, but then again I was in the car driving, and it was probably, I don't know, 100 feet up the road in front of me. So they were kind of making sure that I knew that I had definitely seen something. And the interesting thing is that a couple of years later, I didn't have any UFO books or anything like that at that time. I was working in a lady's house, had a carpet and upholstery cleaning business, and I stopped to have something to eat. And so, as I often did, I looked at her bookshelf to see what kind of books she'd got, and there was one there on UFOs. So I pulled it out and I'm leafing through it idly, and there was a bloody photograph of the craft that I'd seen on the Leek Road that night.
Yeah.
And that photograph was taken by Paul Villa at Albuquerque in New Mexico in the 1960s, and it's full colour, broad daylight. It's the identical craft, and it's got 11 and a half windows visible from a side-on view.
Wow.
Now, Paul Villa told Timothy Good that they weren't actually windows, that it was part of the propulsion system. But all I could see was like a soft yellowy white light inside, so it looked like a window to me. But anyway, that was great, and I found that Paul Villa's photographs were rubbished and they'd been rubbished by Jim and Coral Lawrenson in America, who had their own UFO society. And so some years later, I went to a conference in Leeds, and Wendell Stevens was the main speaker, and halfway through, when we had an interval, I took the opportunity to talk to Wendell, and I said, did you know Paul Villa by any chance, and what about his photographs? People say that they're fakes. I knew they weren't. And he said, Paul was a very good friend of Wendell's, and he said, I'll tell you what happened there. Paul was a gent, and Coral Lawrenson had made an appointment to go and see him at his home, and so he made a big effort to tidy everything up and make food for her and all that kind of thing. And as soon as she got out of the car, the first words that she spoke were, so how did you fake those photographs? So Paul saw red, and he wouldn't speak to her after that. So she went away and spread the word that these were fake photographs, and people just grabbed hold of that, and so they were fakes. Well, I can tell you they're not fakes, they're absolutely genuine photographs. And talking about genuine photographs, back in 2010, was it or 8? I can't remember. I went to Australia and to see my friend Gary, particularly, and stay with him for 6 weeks. But my ulterior motive was to go and see a guy called Eric Thomason.
I know which one you're saying.
Who had photographed a craft coming up out of the sea at Maslin Beach, just south of Adelaide.
I've seen that photo.
Yeah.
And I went to see Eric, and through a series of synchronicities, I was led to find the best quality photographs of that event, because Eric's photographs had been stolen by people posing as a UFO group who came to his house. So all Eric had left were little postcard-sized things, and when I saw them, I was very disappointed. But things happened, and I was led to this man who was an old friend of Gary's, a fellow hang glider, and he happened to have 4 A4-sized photographs that were first-hand copies of the originals, and I actually made hard copies myself, and I sent them back to Eric so that he could see his photographs once again in all their glory. And so all I can say is those are absolutely genuine photographs. That is a real craft that came out of the sea and docked with a smaller craft. The big craft's about 100 feet across, the smaller disc is about 30 feet. And it comes in and docks underneath and then shot off into
You can
space.
see it docking in one of the photos, can't you?
And you can see the tractor beams
Yes,
as well.
yes, you can, yeah.
On there. It's a fantastic thing. And of course the Australian Secret Service, the Australian military were horrified that Eric had got those photographs, and so they did their absolute best to rubbish them, even down to the fact that his son-in-law, who was in the military, borrowed his negatives to have, on the face of it, to have photographs printed for himself. When he brought the negatives back, they were all scratched, and he made the excuse that these had been done at the processors. They hadn't been. They were deliberately damaged. But fortunately we have good copies of the originals, which I've now shared on the internet. I gave them to Richard Hall so he could use them. And Eric was an absolute gem of a guy. He was a war hero, flew planes. He volunteered to join the RAF in 1940. He flew Westland Whirlwinds, which were like a Mosquito type fighter bomber. He was in the Whirlwind Squadron. He then flew Hurricanes off the decks of merchant ship on the Arctic convoys, and actually took off on a mission, knowing full well he would have to ditch in the Arctic, which if he didn't get pulled out quickly he would die. He got shot down in the same way escorting a convoy to the Mediterranean, and spent time in hospital, and then after that he went back in service and flew tempests and typhoons right to the end of the war, doing close support, air support for the advance across Europe after the Allies landed in Normandy. So a hell of a brave man, and a man who I hated to see being ridiculed and rubbished.
He's a man of integrity, basically.
A man of total integrity.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to pull these people apart and say, oh, he's a hoaxer, this is a model that he's made and all that kind of thing. Eric was a serious guy, and he never changed his story to the day he died, and a lovely man. So yeah, so it goes on and on, doesn't it? Eh?
So what would you suggest to people that do have these kind of experiences and they don't know, they don't think they feel like they can tell anyone close in the family, or
which must happen a lot.
yeah.
Well, I mean, people can get in touch with me on my website, which is Macclesfield UFO Society. Just Google that, and you'll be able to contact me, and
We'll put the details on below.
Yeah, we'll have a link.
okay. Yeah, it's very important that there's thousands upon thousands of people like me, but they're all quiet because
There's
they're
the
all.
main message: they're not alone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is exactly it. And when I meet people who are fellow abductees, contactees, whatever, it's like meeting family. They are my family. And
And I suppose it
I
would be
love them.
nice to share those kind of. If you've not been able to share them
Yeah.
for all this time, it would be nice to see.
Yeah, but all it takes is somebody brave enough to stand up and say, this has happened to me, don't be afraid, speak about it, and the more people speak out, the easier it's going to be, and the less easy it's going to be for the authorities to hide it and try and make it look foolish.
Like
So
they've been trying all these years, haven't they?
yeah.
It's breaking down though. It's slowly. I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
breaking down.
and you guys are doing a fantastic job. It's just been great.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you. Yeah.
It's
thank
been
you.
great.
Yeah.
It's great having you here today, and
Yeah.
well, I know you. Yes, I know you've got to go soon, but
Yeah.
it's just a lovely setting, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the people here.
Amongst
as well.
great friends.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
Yeah.
and I suppose that's the big story here. Really, is that although I've been sort of shunned by members of the family and stuff like that over the years, and it has been difficult. Because of my involvement and my willingness to speak out about these things, I've met some incredibly wonderful people, yourselves included. So,
That's it.
so there is a massive upside to all this.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's been a pleasure, Robert.
Thank you.
Absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.